Welcome. This is Gretchen from Afield at Home. Today's flip is my contribution to the Be My Valentine Flip Challenge hosted by the Flippin Bunch. The challenge is to thrift or shop your own stash to create a Valentine-inspired home decor piece. One very cold day in January, I was in the attic putting away Christmas decorations. On my way down the ladder, as I reached for the light switch on the floor, I noticed a board lying in the loose insulation. Pulled it up and saw it was a piece from an old stocking holder, a piece I assumed had been thrown away. So I grabbed it with the intention of tossing it. As I walked it to the stack for the dump, I noticed the decorative metal top had a heart shape in it. The middle. Ding, ding, ding. I had my piece for the Be My Valentine flip. Knowing the next unique antique challenge would involve using AI to flip a piece of furniture, I decided to practice and asked AI to help me flip this Christmas decor into Valentine's Day decor. I liked the sign well enough, so I decided to run with it. Of course, the first step was to clean the piece, which was actually a tad tricky because it's made of MDF, but I still managed somehow. I also didn't film that, but I'm sure you all have seen things be cleaned before. Then I taped off the metal scroll work and covered it with cardboard in order to prime it. And I used a shellac-based primer. As you can see, it was very cold inside my house, and I was bundled in layers, including an old hat that I had found in the attic. But don't worry, I washed it. So, bye-bye Christmas sign. Hello clean slate. One corner of the piece was a little smushed, so I worked in some glue using dental floss and clamped it. Then I used Dixie Belle's chalk mineral paint in the color drop cloth to go over the primer. It's kind of a warm white. So it was surprisingly difficult and complicated to get the look I wanted for the lettering. I decided to create my own stencil using a Silhouette Cameo 5. It was my first time using it, and I learned that in order to use my chosen font, I would have to purchase it. Who knew fonts could be so expensive? So I decided not to do that. I already owned letter stencils, but they were 5 inches high, and I needed the letters to be 2.5 to 3 inches. So I took pictures of the letters that I would need, and then I merged them into Silhouette design using the stencil, or in order to create the stencil that I needed. So this can be done by opening a new design, going to File up at the top left and merge, then select the item you want to import. The pictures came in as though they were the size of my house. I'm sure there's a way to make them smaller before merging, but I haven't delved into that yet, and so I don't know what that method is. So I minimized the pictures to the appropriate size and placed them where I wanted them. Then used the trace function, which is over on the right, looks like a butterfly. Clicked on that. I clicked on trace, and then I highlighted the section of my image, of the image that I wanted to be traced. I chose to separate the trace from the picture when I activated it. Then once I pulled the picture away, the letter was left on the design. Right there. So as you can see, the format is 12 by 12 inches, which is the limit with the Cameo 5. The grid on the design section helps you determine the actual size of the items to be cut or drawn. So for letters that I used more than once, like this L, once I get this sized properly and I do the trace, and it puts the image that I need onto the design grid, I just copy pasted it by right clicking on the screen, and then after all of it was done, you'll see what the stencil is going to look like. And I ended up cutting it onto 10 mil Mylar, which is very sturdy. So if I ever want to use these words again, I've got I've got a stencil now that should last me quite a while. On to painting with stencils. I chose Dixie Belle's chalk mineral paint in the color Barn Red for the letters. And I used a little foam dauber to apply the paint. Never been very good at clean stenciling, so I decided to try the dauber, and it actually worked out quite well. I also used tacky spray on the back of the stencil to help hold it down, like especially on the edges and curves of the letters. So that helped make a difference. I wanted a curve in the phrase to kind of tie somewhat with the curve of the scroll work. So the fact that the words weren't, in a line that I could just set down onto the board was not a problem. It did mean I had to wait for the previous section or word to dry before I could move on to the next. The first two words could be applied together. The third was easy enough to place in the center under the scroll work heart. The last two words, well, the analytical side of my brain was not going to let me eyeball the placement of the last two words. So I had to get out the ruler and make certain I wasn't making it completely wonky. As you can see, and you'll see in a moment here where I finally do show you applying the tacky spray. I wish I could remember the name of it, but I just can't. It's escaping me. And it's already put away somewhere. I can't remember where I put it either. So at any rate, you'll see that I very carefully push down on all the little sections. And it's also important to note when you're stenciling, you don't want to have too much paint or ink or whatever medium, unless, of course, you're doing a raised relief. It's important to not have too much paint on your tool. So you'll see me here put a little bit on, and I'm just using it from the lid, from shaking the paint can, and then I kind of wipe off any excess onto a paper towel. And I even, at this point, in some of the points, I used a toothpick to kind of hold down the smaller little sections. Some of the letters had very small pieces. See, look at me checking again with that ruler. I don't know. Which is really funny because you'll see. Yeah, it's. I'm happy to say that I still managed to make the word love prove the sign was handmade. There we see the toothpick. So I took the Barn Red and I added just a tiny amount of drop cloth to it before applying it to this heart. I wanted to kind of add a little bit of depth or make them just slightly different from the red of the letters. And I already had stencils with the decor items that I'm going to be putting around on the sign. They're very simple. I probably could have free-handed them if necessary. Well, maybe not the hearts. My hearts are always lopsided. That's why I loved when I was a kid that you could fold it in half and cut it, and then it would turn out perfect. But anyway, so then I added even more drop cloth paint to the hearts color, the color I used on the hearts, and to make a pink for this flower. Because somehow, if there isn't red, white, and pink, it just isn't Valentine's to me. I guess that's left over from elementary school, too. So for the stem, I used Dixie Belle again, this time in the color Palmetto. And I used the same color for the leaves that I placed in the center under the phrase. I didn't originally intend to put something there, but it just felt like there was a big empty space. Then I did some touch-up work just to make sure any spaces that were, a little faded or that didn't get as much paint were okay. I also added a little bit of the straight barn red to the parts of the heart and a little bit of the flower to kind of accentuate it a little bit more. Finally, I used a clear finishing spray because there were a few spots that were tacky from the spray I used on the stencils, despite what the can said. And here is the final result. I think it turned out well, and it makes me wonder if the factory in China that made the Christmas stocking piece used this for Valentine decor also, because that heart is just too perfect. As promised, the love is just a bit off the proper line, but I think it adds character. I hope you enjoyed this flip. If so, please like this video and consider subscribing. Be sure to check out the playlist in the description. There are fabulous crafts and transformations to be found. Thank you to the Flippin Bunch for hosting this challenge, and everyone have a wonderful day.